Okay, so then we'll start. First, to talk a little bit, to repeat what indoor environmental quality is all about, because we tend to talk a lot about the air quality only. But the most important, of course, is the impact of the indoor climate on people's health, followed by perceived comfort and also the well-being, and how the indoor climate is also affecting and facilitating our productivity as persons. And it's not just about the thermal comfort, as Ewen said, it's about air quality, the humidity inside, and also connects to light and lighting inside, and the acoustic sound environment, of course. So this is the basis of the IEQ. So some quick facts about what defines a comfortable IEQ. Well, as you all might know, it's about low air velocity, that you don't feel any draft inside, that the air velocity in the occupancy zone is below 0.15 meters per second. Then you will not perceive it as a draft. And also that you have a good air quality, of course, with low levels of pollutants and carbon dioxide levels. And it should be around 400 ppm as we perceive it. And one important factor is also something that we tend to also maybe neglect sometimes, is the relative air humidity. And that should be indoors between 40 to 60%. So that's where we feel most comfortable. And I guess maybe in the UK you have the same issue as we do in the Scandinavian buildings, that we tend to want to keep our buildings as dry as possible to avoid mold and so on. But it also means that it often goes below these limits during the winter time. And you can feel that since we contain a big part of water, we also are affected if the relative humidity goes below this interval. So it's one important factor, but we should attend to as well. Also the temperature, the thermal comfort is very important, and I will also show you an example of that shortly. But it means that we should try to keep it around 21 degrees here. And if we have any deviations in temperature, it will affect us quite strongly. This is the factor that will impact our productivity the most, actually. But not only all of these factors, also the sound environment has a serious impact on our comfort. And it's not only about strong sounds that we can hear very well, or disturbing noise, but it's also lower sound levels, which may be in the building that we don't hear particularly well, but we can feel it in our body. And those tones can also be very annoying and also have a very serious effect on our health. And last but not least, light and lighting is also a very important part of us feeling well and being productive inside. Why is IEQ important? Well, if we look at it, it's have different aspects that we need to attend to. The soft values here on the left, health, our well-being, how the building is doing during all of its life cycle, and how we can also engineer different applications and do them in a good way. For example, hospitals, museums with relative humidity, manufacturing facilities, and lab applications. And also the more usual ones that you have covered today, residential and also offices. That is maybe the biggest part that we are dealing with as a HVAC company. All of this will affect the performance of the building and the energy efficiency, and also the building economy. But if we look at it, how people are affected, you can see two examples here when we look at air quality and then temperature. So our cognitive functions as people is very well affected on a CO2 level when it comes to our strategic thinking. So if the CO2 level rises in a room where we are sitting, we can do simple tasks very easily and continue with that. But when it comes to our strategic thinking and decision making and so on, and more advanced tasks, then our performance level goes down quite dramatically when the CO2 level increases. So it's very important also to have a well-ventilated office building or domestic building when it comes to these parts. Also, when it comes to the temperature, you can see that when the temperature goes up, our relative performance level goes down quite dramatically. So if it's too warm, we will reduce our performance level quite a lot. So it's good when your paycheck is not related to the temperature inside for your performance here. And also the same thing is valued if the office is too cold, of course, then also our relative performance level will go down. And also when it comes to our health, how is it affected? Well, we also have some emissions coming from the room, from paint on the walls, plastic, chemicals, or kitchen fumes when we are standing cooking our dinner. And all of these can cause respiratory problems if it's not ventilated well. We also are talking about this too low or high humidity level. If we have too high humidity level, we might have bacterial growth, release of chemicals, have this sort of bake-off effect on certain chemicals that they are released out in the air. We also have the risk of getting mold and mites, and all of this can cause allergies and respiratory problems and asthma. We're also thinking about noise in the living environment, something that maybe you're just, oh, it's noisy and we just have to live with it. But a certain research has also found that monotone noise can actually affect how we sleep and also lead to heart disorders in worst case. And I guess all of this has recently been confirmed a lot. Ewen, when you are talking about the COP or the COP26 conference, the World Health Organization recently set some new guidelines during September this year that 7 million people across the globe dies too early each year due to polluted air. And that is not just the outdoor air, it's also the indoor air. And when you say that the indoor air can be polluted 5 times more than the outside air, you realize that we are working with a very important issue here for health and well-being. So air pollution is now recognized as the single biggest environmental threat to human health. And that also we have to consider tobacco industry or smokers and so on, but air pollution has now gone past that. And what is it that affects our health? It's the primary and secondary particles that we have in the air, but also gases, and particulate matter like ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and carbon monoxide. And WHO has now implemented some guidelines and requires that we should also monitor air pollution and also give public access to air quality data. And it should be legally binding and globally harmonized air quality standards and air quality management systems, not only outside, but also indoors. So one of the areas that we have all of these pollutants outside is, of course, in megacities around the world, like Hanoi and Delhi and so on. And I think you might have noticed during the COVID that in Delhi, for example, they saw the mountains at the horizon for the first time when the COVID shut down the industrial companies in the area. So that is how much pollutants there are in the air in those areas. And then it's hard to do a good indoor climate as well in an energy efficient way. But in Europe, we also have this problem. We have the Po Valley in Italy, which is highly polluted, and we also have the Balkan states, and close to you, London is one of the areas where we have a high nitrogen dioxide level. So all of this is very urgent for us to attend to also when it comes to climate change, and also how we can minimize the energy consumption in our buildings, of course, and contribute to this. If you look at IEQ across Europe, I know you have talked today, and when you said you had a lot of IEQ focus in UK, and you Clean Air Act, and a focus on lowering greenhouse gas emissions in general, and also your work with measuring and monitor the IEQ. If we look at Germany, they had a governmental funding set up for 500 million euros for retrofits and upgrades in governmental buildings. They don't have any more legislation about having ventilation inside their building. So they want to build green if they have a client or a customer demand that requires that, but they don't have no legislation that they need to have a certain amount of ventilation inside the buildings. So their energy consumption programs to refurb buildings is focused more on energy and not on ventilation. So here we have some things to address, I think, as a ventilation industry. In France, they look a lot at air pollutant and IEQ as well. And I know that you mentioned in the previous roundtable session about this with air filtration and how to handle that with the building as a barrier against air pollutants outside. But this could also affect the energy bill, of course, if you insert a HEPA filter in the air handling unit. This will affect your energy consumption as well, and also the system in general. And they are also talking more and more about thermal comfort, of course, with cooling and energy efficiency in combination with that. And then I took an example from Poland. They are a little bit later than the rest of Europe, and they say in the World Green Building Report from 2018 that they need more of a market transformation to be more green and energy efficient and talk about IEQ questions. So they need improved 10-year cost argumentation on their market when it comes to IEQ questions and energy saving. And they don't have any public awareness almost about the IEQ questions at all. And then we have the Scandinavian countries, which is talking more and more since a couple of years from IAQ more towards IEQ. And we talk not only about ventilation, but a lot about temperature and how it affects our productivity, and which way to do the HVAC system in the most energy efficient way, of course, but combining it with IEQ. We're talking about health post-COVID, as you have done as well today, and air quality when it comes to schools and elderly care homes. And that is also a trend, of course, especially in Sweden, where we had a lot of COVID in the elderly care homes. So this is a topic that is very much up to date here. We are also talking about cutting capacity highs and how we can control that in our ventilation systems by sequencing and still keep the IEQ focus. And predictive maintenance to keep the IEQ and comfort level is also a big topic. But the global trends in general, I think, is sustainability, energy efficiency, digitalization, IEQ, and green buildings. So this is a topics that I think is in common all over the world. But some countries have come longer, and some are trailing behind a little bit. Some barriers and opportunities that I've found when I've put all of this material together is that the buildings account for approximately 40% of the EU's overall energy consumptions and for 36% of the EU's overall emissions of greenhouse gas. And it's not so easy to work with IEQ and ventilation and comfort and energy all together, because it's easy to do it in a wrong way. For example, in Germany, they have become very good at insulating their houses, but since they open their windows, they keep the windows open all day, and then you heat a lot and lose a lot of energy in the building anyway, even if you have insulated in a good way to save energy. This is an opposite effect. So we have some examples where good intentions doesn't meet the behavior of the persons that are inside the building. But our industry has identified some barriers and opportunities that we need to address. We think we lack clear political directives, legislation, and incentives for working with indoor environmental air quality. And we tend to focus on energy efficiency only, not on the health and well-being of the buildings. And we focus on the outdoor air and what to do there with electrical cars, and that is fine and necessary, but we don't focus so much on what should we do with the buildings and the indoor air. Retrofit is also something that we need to address, and is there any standards or good examples that we could use and work with technology in a good way? One barrier is also to invest in IEQ means you invest in a higher initial cost when you're building, and that is a big barrier for most projects. And also that it's a lack of public awareness about this topic and how the building indoor environment affects us. So we need to be better at pushing this. And there is also a lack of customer demands with the building owners and so on. But I think, however, this is changing a lot when we're talking about this topic. So we have to just educate our customers even more. And also green building skills, how to build and do this in a proper and effective way. But there are also some opportunities, of course, for this. We have a EU renovation wave initiative with the European community and also all over Europe. That we want to save emissions from these buildings that we have in our European building stock. So this is something that probably will give some incentives and directives and so on. And we also have the revision of the energy performance of the Buildings Directive, EPBD, and here we could also influence to support measuring and other stuff that will boost this part with ventilation and indoor environmental quality. We also have digitalization and Internet of Things that will open up a whole new market and also a potential of doing new systems and integrate that, and we'll come back to that. And also the building certifications, real estate owners and investors are getting more and more educated and informed about how to reach green building certifications, and are also better and better at demanding certain features in the house and choosing systems. And IEQ, health and productivity, is more in focus than it was 10 years ago. So how it impacts us is very much a more current topic. So how can we look at IEQ and demand-controlled ventilation? I think we can look at how the energy consumption is affected in general. So if we look to the right and we look at the system with the constant air volume, the blue one, And in the green one, we have demand-controlled ventilation. And you can see that it has a clear effect on the energy consumption. So you can save up to 80% on fan power and up to 40% on energy for heating and cooling. This means that you might be able to downsize the system, so you can save space and investments cost. And you can also choose to improve comfort in the building. But you can also look at it in a different way, that you can increase the ventilation when it's needed. If you already have an existing system, you can actually increase the ventilation rate when there is more occupancy, and look at it in that way instead of reducing the air flow. So we can turn the argumentation a little bit around why we should work with demand-controlled indoor climate. We should increase when we need the ventilation capacity, when it's a lot of people in the office. What we have also seen when we have studied this demand-controlled ventilation systems is that actually when we use this, we also see that the perceived comfort with the end user goes up, so it increases the satisfaction with the ventilation with 58%. Another thing that is important and why we should work with IEQ is how is the building economy affected. So if we work with demand-controlled indoor climate, this is necessary for reaching the higher levels when it comes to environmental building certifications. And also studies that have been done by the Green Building Council shows that when you get to a higher level of environmental certification, you get lower operating cost and increased building value. And as you can see on the tables to the right, you can see that the decreased operating cost over 1 year for a new green building is between 5% up to 12%, except for Poland, where it's 3%. And decreased operating cost over 5 years is up to 22% in Ireland, or 31% in Spain. And they also have some figures for the green retrofit. And so it's you can see your payback time for green investments in these reports. And also another economy potential that we have is also that we get payback when it comes to the soft values. SWEGON and all of our competitors, we can provide investors or the builders with the particular system solutions, but all of them can approximately save 10% when it comes to energy efficiency, because we have all of these good solutions that we can provide. But if you also invest in an IEQ building where people want to be and where they thrive and are productive, and you have a good facility and a good HVAC system, you can increase your rent, and you can get return on your investment about 300 euro per square meter. And also, the biggest saving is if you have a house full of very high salary people, like lawyers or something, then you can also see that if you get people to the workplace, they are productive, they don't have any sick leaves, etc., you can save around 3,000 euro per square meter in the payroll as well. So there are big economical potential when it comes to investing in IEQ as well. And one of the property managers of the Scandinavian facility management, Castellum, says that high quality indoor climate conditions are the alpha and omega of an office building with the customer satisfaction. And this is really important for them when it comes to keeping their tenants in the building. So they provide high quality climate. But what is the future? In Holland, in Amsterdam, we have the office building at the Edge. This is the world's most intelligent and sustainable smart building. It contains around 40,000 sensors in this building. And it is so popular to work there that people hand in their application spontaneously because they want to come and work in the building and make and be in that environment. And it knows exactly when you arrive to the building and you come to your garage, they assign you a parking spot. They know which elevator you should go to, and they assign you a desk in a location suitable for your needs that day, if you want to be more in solitude or if you want to interact with people. And it even knows if the coffee in the coffee machine is out. So everything is connected in this building. And it takes care of the wastewater from the ceiling, and it also recirculates that, and it measures everything in the building so they can also address issues with the facility management and make more predictive maintenance. So if we go more into IEQ and sensors, I think the HVAC focus will go into more value creation and be part of a new ecosystem. That our products, we will still deliver them as suppliers, but we will also add value with the know-how about how to ventilate or make good comfort in a room. So we can measure, monitor, and visualize together with our clients. For example, SWEGON has a WISE indoor climate system where we have a complete system for the indoor climate. So you can also visualize it. So it integrates everything via wireless communication, and we can use it in a common user interface. So we can also log and see graphs how the indoor climate behaves, and the facility manager or the owner of the building can also look at this and balance between comfort and energy efficiency. And all of this system is adapted with wireless sensor, so everything is efficient to help the construction process with smart solution from sketch to operation, and also to be flexible when it comes to remodeling the building. But there are also other stuff going on within IEQ, not only within SWEGON, but in the HVAC industry. So we are looking into new digital services. I know you talked in the previous roundtable about partner API, that you can connect sensors in a building and create new services. So, for example, our sensors in our HVAC system can provide data that you can take out of this API and connect together with other data from other sensors in the building, and you can create new services. So this is one way to use the HVAC system sensors and create new value in a new ecosystem. We also are looking into analytics services, which is an AI powered analytics tool for indoor environment, and also visualization services where the end users can interact and see what is happening in the building, and also user apps. So just an example, what you can do with different analytics tools. You get this in a cloud-based form, which means that it's an AI-driven analytics service, and it analyzes data from sensors in the building. So you don't have to use a certain system. You can pick the data from different sensors. And we put them all together in a report function. And this report function then reports deviation, describe cause of deviation, and gives suggestions how to correct the deviation. And you can compare the indoor climate of the building with building standards. So you can put in the LEED or WELL certification and see how the indoor climate is performing against the building standard in some of these tools. You also have predictive alarm management. So the AI learns by machine learning, and it predicts deviations before they occur. So you can handle this before it comes or occurs. Helps also the facility manager to work more effectively and address topics before.
Well, also, just to say, we've got quite a few questions coming in, so will you be able to finish fairly quickly, and then we can get on to the questions?
Only have 2 slides left.
Thank you.
Possible to you compare your building also in some of these analytics tools, that you can compare your building to a similar building in the area, because they build some of them. These tools build a database with the similar buildings that you can compare yourself to, so you can also compete if you're a 10 points building or if you're a 7.0 performer or something. So this is an example how it could look like. So we measure volatile organic compounds, and if it's okay, it's green, and if you have some issues, it might be blue or red. This is an example how it could look like. And also some feedback how you can address it. And also to visualize, we think is more and more important, and there are some tools on the market that you can have displays in each office floor and show current status of the indoor climate. And this means that you get more transparency and create understanding on the end user side, and it actually makes people more satisfied and reduce the number of error reports. And you can also have a feedback function where tenants can voice their opinion about the indoor climate. So you can put it on info screens all over the building as well. So this is, I think, is the future of IEQ and visualizing it and interact. So I think HVAC will move from products into systems and also new services. And that is also how we can benefit and address all of these issues that we have brought up, or possibilities, and not the least, the climate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So that was fantastic. What a tremendous amount of information you gave us there. Thank you so much for that. It's generated quite a bit of interest, and so we have a few questions. I was just interested because we always think Scandinavians do this stuff so much better than we do here in the UK. And when I looked at that slide where you had what's going on around Europe, I was proved right, I think, because your Scandinavian list is a lot longer than ours. And so I think we need to up our game a bit. So thank you for that. So one of the things that's interesting people a lot is you talked about digitalization, which obviously we know is crucial. But is this I mean, I'll put this out to the panel as a bit of a kickoff. Do we think embracing digital systems is going to be the complete answer, or are our solutions primarily technical or behavioural, or are they both? Doug, I mean, what do you think about that? Welcome, Doug, by the way.
Hi, everybody. Great presentation, Åsa. Really good. Really important and big question, Ewen. For me, obviously, it's going to be a combination of technical and behavioural things. I think it's important to realise that most of the buildings that we're going to be living in 2050 already exist. So in many of these cases, it's going to be about retrofitting solutions or changing how people interact with buildings. My expertise is primarily in indoor air quality. So I firmly believe that you can't improve what you can't measure. So I think both being able to provide the sort of visualizations which help inform behavioral initiatives, but then also integration into HVAC technologies to automatically manage that are going to be important. I think the overarching message is there isn't going to be one size fits all solution, but it's going to be a suite of different technologies and behavioral changes.
It's that retrofitting point, Doug, that seems to be the theme of the day. We kicked off with George Clark this morning, talking about the massive global retrofitting challenge. I mean, he's clearly he sees where the problem lies, and that, building swanky new buildings isn't the solution. It's all about what we can do with what we've got. And we talked a lot about that in the earlier roundtable. I think what you were talking about there, also moving from products to systems, that we're needing to roll that out right across the existing building stock. Bit of a challenge, Nathan?
Yeah, because most of the time the fancy stuff gets engineered out. Where's the value in it? Is it a requirement? Do I need it in the regulations? No. Okay, I don't need it then. There's a real shift. There will be a shift happen. COVID has brought air quality into everybody's world, and off the back of that, fortunately, there is some positives to come from COVID, and that is that everyone's talking about air quality now and viruses and particulates. It's the word ventilation is out in the mainstream. It's in the press. It's everywhere. But just dropping back, I think behavioural change is an easy thing to try and put forward. It's actually maintaining that behavioural change. Changing my behaviour is very, very difficult. So my wife tells me, but it's one of those where we've instilled it in our own office in terms of social distancing, but maintaining social distancing as people get relaxed within a space, within the same faces, is quite difficult. So I think with technology that can alert you to things, we've all got one of these in our back pockets, the alerts and the systems that can be integrated into our day-to-day life can bring added value rather than just a dashboard or just a light or a sensor. We need to actually respond and react to the data that we're collecting.
Thanks, Nathan. Josh, as SWEGON's UK representative, presumably you're fairly optimistic about the way things are going and bringing in some of this wider Scandinavian thinking, this approach. We've got an opportunity here. We also talked about barriers and opportunities, big opportunities in the UK.
Yeah, we've got loads of opportunities. The good thing is, if you almost say that there's three components to this, or in my view at least, and one is having the energy efficient products and the right ventilation solution for the right building. And between us and a lot of others in the HVAC industry, we all make fantastically energy efficient products and ways to heat and cool buildings. That exists. That's very much there today. Then you have systems to take that and to measure it and to adapt to changes within the building. And again, as also said, SWEGON have a solution, but there's others, and you can control it through the BMS or and so on. So that also exists today. I think the thing that doesn't exist or is not widely used, and the area that's really, for me, an exciting opportunity, is when we start to visualize that and then therefore enact behavioral change. And it's going to be a real challenge. In schools, we tell people that they need to eat good food and they need to drink water every day, but we don't explain to them the impact that air quality has on them. So we can't just feed people, in the same way we say calorific numbers and so on. We need to find simple ways to communicate that to people in understandable terms. Happy faces, sad faces, based on the indoor climate or something. Lots of ways we could do it. But I think that, for me, the visualization and empowering people within the buildings to understand the environment they're in, that's the next step of change that needs to happen. And then people need to be prepared to either stamp up the cash or legislate for it and so on. Then that'll be the next phase.
And that's interesting because we've talked about this a lot, all of us here in this group. I was first time met also, but also with the other three of you, about the issue around schools. It's something we've been looking at through BESA, and you've been looking at, Josh, through SWEGON. And I noticed that from Os's presentation, there is specific focus on schools in Scandinavia, and maybe that's something we could pick up on. Nathan, that's something we've been talking about a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, we've really been championing school indoor air quality, and we was happy at one point when we saw that the CO2 monitors were going to be rolled out, and at least the government was taking an initiative and pushing it forward. Unfortunately, again, sorry to be negative, but it was a race to the bottom. That they weren't the best sensors. They did a job, but the way in which I know firsthand that they're being used, we've got a great relation with Gary Ratcliffe at the Galaxy Trust, and my wife, she works at a school as well, and it's the application and the expectation from the staff to be able to handle this. People within schools are there to do one thing: teach the children. It's not their main responsibility to be glancing across an air quality monitor or hoping that the data's there, or somebody walking into a room, waving a sensor around in the air for 5 minutes, taking a reading and walking off to the next classroom. We can do better than that. We can do a lot better than that. And previous studies that Doug's been part of have been really, really valuable. They exist. The data's there for us to analyse and move on. it's all been paid for historically. Why aren't we looking back at that data and using it to what its intended purpose was? It's just a bit frustrating.
And this is part of Josh's point about visualizing, isn't it? So you can show people what it is what they're dealing with. And Doug, you said there, you can't improve what you can't measure. And Nathan mentioned the project you carried out in a number of schools. It's getting that information out there and putting it in a way that's meaningful to the person who is responsible.
Yeah, and I think one of the key points is indoor air quality, albeit indoor environmental quality, are defined by what you measure. So indoor air, we work closely with indoor air quality scientists. We sponsor multiple PhD projects, and that community has been saying for more than 20 years that CO2 does not equal indoor air quality. And so I'll echo Nathan's points. I think it's fantastic that for the first time there are tens of thousands of air quality sensors in schools. I think it's a great first step. But the problem is if you define indoor air quality by one pollutant, in this case CO2, how you define it then influences how you act. And then that's going to have large implications for not just air quality, but for energy efficiency. So returning to the schools, for example, an approach that just measures carbon dioxide and has that as a proxy for indoor air quality essentially is there to remove airborne viruses indoors. And the implications of that are you might try to manage CO2 to get it as low as possible. And of course, you'll be replacing that with outdoor air. That outdoor air may or may not be fresh. It's more likely not to be, based on some of the spatio-temporal maps of air quality in the UK, notwithstanding the significant energy penalties there are going to be from, in many schools, just opening the windows all year round. So what you measure is very important because it influences how you act. And that's going to have many, many different knock-on effects for indoor environmental quality in general.
Yeah, and I suppose it's also, I wonder if Ewen's frozen. It looks a bit frozen on my screen, but I mean, it's a good point because if you only measure CO2, you miss things like the cleaning contaminants, which is particularly relevant in this corona pandemic kind of related world where we're constantly cleaning things, and then you have the horrible nasty chemicals floating in the air but undetected. And I mean, that's why it's important you measure multiple things, whether it's VOCs, and you can actually use, I think, VOC as a proxy for CO2 as well, potentially, if you wanted as well. But I mean, the more you can measure, the better you can react.
Well, just on that point, Josh, so we did a large UK study last year in 20 schools around the UK pre and post COVID. And it was obvious that the message around increasing ventilation had got to the schools. We did a study in the spring before COVID and in autumn after COVID. And the general improvement in ventilation was something like a 3 or 4 times increase. We saw a 3 or 4 time increase in the level of VOCs in the classroom. So it was essentially an equilibrium where you were ventilating much more, but there were so many more cleaning products that it had perfectly balanced out. And these things are invisible in many cases. So in that sense, you're not going to be aware that you may be fixing one problem but introducing another.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Doug. I apologise there. I dropped out completely for a minute or so there. So if that happens again, please just carry on talking among yourselves because we've got another 10 minutes. So, but I heard the beginning and the end of your point there, Doug. One of the questions that's coming in is around the issue of skills, though. So we've talked a lot about the technical solutions, visualizing the problem, and then that we have products and that are the components of systems to deliver those solutions. And you've given us good information about how we are perhaps presenting the issue to schools as an example and showing them that they have a problem. So if you then have a problem and you think you might have the solutions, the technical solutions, but do we have the skilled people? Now, I'd be interested to see Ossa's thoughts on this because we're always arguing about skills in the UK and that we haven't got the people and young people don't want to join our industry. And I know, Nathan, you're continually trying to recruit people. Also, is there a skills issue in Scandinavia as well, with how people understand these technologies and how to apply them?
I think there is quite a good understanding, but we also have a generation change with the consultants and so on, and engineers. So I think there is a risk that a lot of competence is going away. So we need to address that as well. And I think, like you have more conferences on these topics, and also how to use the new technology and systems, so you don't put all the sensors in, and like Doug and Nathan has touched a little bit, that you just measure and you don't understand what you're doing with this. So we still have to provide the know-how to the business, how the system works. So I think that is essential. And I think George Clark mentioned this at the very beginning of the skills of the building industry, that a lot of knowledge is going away.
Yeah, and he's trying to enthuse school children. He's got a really fantastic project going on where they get, and he said we need to get school children excited.
Yeah.
About what we're doing, and I think we probably all agree with that. And Nathan, where do you see the root of our skills problem?
Apprenticeships. There you go. Thank you.
Excellent. One word answer. Perfect.
It is though. We missed this. I think it's caught up with us now. Apprenticeships became a thing of the past, and although we've been championing them, we've got 5 underway, 2 just coming out of their time. Nobody wants to do a time-served apprenticeship. They want the quick win. They want to finish school, get a job, get a car, get a house. And unfortunately, apprenticeships aren't paid very well. You know, we pay ours above what we should because we like to look after our staff, because there's bigger companies out there who are trying to take them away from us, because there is this skill shortage and people can afford to pay big bucks for skilled people. In terms of how can we generate this excitement around being an engineer, I think the term engineer has just been sort of watered down too much over the years. And it used to be, if you was an engineer, you was a doctor, it was up there. Everyone's an engineer. You know, there's lots of jokes about different job roles and titles about being an engineer. However, there's a lot of people that have, I said this earlier, a lot of people and businesses that have been affected by COVID, that they're now looking to migrate into the ventilation space, air quality space. I mean, you know, Doug's an air quality expert, but there's salesmen coming to visit me, selling me things and trying to pitch things to me as an indoor air quality expert, but yet they've just changed from selling soap, you know. And it's those people that unfortunately will get in front of head teachers, will get into to schools in different buildings and look at selling different products that are, you know, with these amazing tales of being NASA-based studies and this, that, and the other. It's really difficult for us in the industry to work out what's good and bad and what works and what doesn't. So how on earth is Joe Public going to take that on board, or they just take the facts presented to them? So getting people involved and excited. I think it's all about this digital age, digital twin, you know, AI, machine learning. You know, it's not so much engineering as getting your hands dirty and rolling around on the floor underneath HVAC units and changing filters. That is part of the course, obviously. But there's a whole new excitement coming through, certainly with our guys here, with what they see going on with SWEGON and other companies alike, and what BESA are promoting in terms of what is possible. And if we can promote that change now, they're going to develop and push that on way beyond my means. So that's the excitement that I think we need to instill. And I mean, I've spoken to a few schools, hopefully SWEGON and other companies like you can get in front of schools, but certainly maybe this is an angle that BESA should take, and if they're not already, is to try and get in front of these younger generations to make them want to become HVAC engineer, controls engineer, you know, because they're not out there now.
Yeah, I think the education system in this country is changing to an extent, because I think possibly from a purely financial point of view, because people, they don't want to necessarily do the old traditional university.
I think you froze.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Nathan. I think it's an opportunity with the sensors and the digitalization also to attract people to this business and engineering, because we can visualize and they can also get feedback in their work in a different way with the sensors.
Yeah, sorry, I lost my my connection there for a little while. I was just going to ask Josh, from your perspective, Josh, from working for a high quality, forward looking manufacturer, but based in the UK. Is there a role for companies like yours in promoting this to a younger generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not just younger generation. I think it's inspiring all sorts of people, and what will really benefit us as an industry is not just recruiting people from our industry as well, and we have to be careful with that. But bringing people in who have a humanities background or cyber security background and have an IT background and so on, and bringing them into our business, that will also be fantastic, because they can feed new insights, new angles into our product development, into the way we approach the market, the way we talk to different types of customers and people within the supply chain as well. Having said that, and that's all fantastic, absolutely there's a massive part for us, for Nathan, for BESA, and for our industry as a whole, and all the work we do with city patrons and so on, to actually get out there in front of young people and almost rebrand, for want of a better word, engineering as it's an exciting thing. And I think you and I have often said, Ewen, actually, engineers save lives. Inverted commas, we're superheroes. We can actually go out there and save people's lives, make them happier, healthier, wealthier, all that good stuff. But it's not seen that way. It's often seen as a dirty trade, and climbing under dirty and dusty air handling units in a roof space, and that's part of it. But there's actually also other sides to it. So it's more multifaceted than that, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. And actually, that point about saving lives, that came out of last year's BESA conference. We had a presentation from a professor at Harvard who talked about building engineers as the physicians of the future and our role in healthcare, and supporting essential services, but also just improving people's health and well-being in buildings, which brings us right back to the start, Åsa. And what advice would you give over there in Scandinavia when you're doing all these wonderful things? What would you give to us in the UK, as maybe we'll sort of start to wrap up here in the UK, about what we should be doing about promoting the importance of IEQ in buildings, particularly to a young generation whose long-term health and well-being depends on it?
Well, I don't know if I'm the right person to give advice, but I think you should continue like you have with these conferences, but also go out and maybe visualize this indoor climate in a different way. Now when we have the technology, so you can interact, then it's more real and more interesting.
Do you agree with that, Doug? Do you think that's something we should be focusing on in the UK?
I don't want to oversimplify the solution to it, but it seems almost like a problem of branding. It really should be exciting to people getting into this area. We say buildings responsible for around 40% of our carbon footprint in the UK. There are many people who are doing apprenticeships or their studies where, they want to go out and make a difference, particularly around environmental sustainability. And this is a huge area where you'll be able to make a difference.
Yeah.
So I think it's about communicating that that message in a way that's appealing.
And perhaps what's happening at the moment in Glasgow with the COP26 is an opportunity. It's a platform to promote this in the widest sense. It's not just about energy saving. I was thinking, Nathan, how much you've enjoyed seeing people gluing themselves to motorways in this country, because all they want to do is talk about insulation. But we know that if you insulate tight, you've got to ventilate right. So how do we get that message out?
Yeah, they do talk about retrofit as well, but I don't think they quite get the full angle of the retrofit side of it. But I sort of agree with what they're doing and completely disagree at the same time. I think they're going against the wrong people to get on their side.
Yeah, I
think COVID has paid us a huge favour in terms of getting the message out there about ventilation and air quality. And whilst I don't agree that we should, as ventilation or HVAC people, go and glue ourselves to motorways, we do need to start and sing from the rooftops about what we can do as the physicians of buildings. He's gone again, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he was just going to wrap up anyway.
That seemed like a pretty pithy finish to me, Nathan. No, saying with the physicians of buildings.
Just final word to you then, Josh. I mean, this is something we've talked about, a potential way for BESA and SWEGON to collaborate going forward, a campaign around this. I think probably promoting Nathan's idea of apprenticeships as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have the products, we have the ability to control them. We're working on the visualization of it, and we need the awareness and the people in place, I think, to make it a reality. That's got to be the next step. There's my closing notes.
So thank you. We'll watch this space for next year. Thank you all very much. Sorry, my connection kept dropping in and out, but we got there in the end. Also, thank you for your fantastic presentation. That gave us huge amount of food for thought, and we'll be feeding that back over the next day and a half. So thank you all. Thank you also, Nathan, Doug, and Josh. And and come along to the Buildings as Safe Havens session tomorrow afternoon with Nathan, Doug, and I will be there again. So talking about these things, but other things too. So see you all again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bye-bye.